You're listening to Speak Your Piece, a podcast about social determinants of health. I am your host, Dr. Damien Kelly. What is going on? How is everybody? It has been a long time, a long hiatus, but looks like we are back. It's good to see you. I missed you. Did you miss me? I hope so. I'm glad you're doing well. We are back. It's been a long hiatus, but we missed you guys. We've had some changes in our department, but we're looking like we're coming back and we are here to stay. So get ready, strap yourselves in. Today's episode is an episode we recorded a while back. It is with a close friend of mine. His name is Gabe. He is a school teacher at charter schools here in Houston, Texas. And Gabe and I were in rock bands together. I used to open up for his band. His band used to open up for my band sometimes. We had a long history of going back and forth, and we recently just caught back up. It's been a while. So this conversation is really just two old friends talking. And in this conversation, you're going to hear more about how he is working in a charter school now, and he's educating youth, and it's predominantly Hispanic charter school. And he is, working with these young people who have to all the different things like ChatGPT, technology, all the different types of distractions there are out in the world. He has to battle those and try to educate these young people, as well as, work over sometimes the cultural gaps that may apply as well. So sit back, relax. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Well, actually, it's just going to be audio, actually, but I'm doing the video pieces before and after, kind of letting you know what's going on. So sit back, listen up, enjoy, and I will be back to recap. All right, so I am here with my buddy. Haven't talked to him in a very long time. He's the guest on this week's episode of Speak Your Piece. I'm sitting here with
Gabriel Barbieri.
Awesome, who is an educator. Gabe, you and I have had lots of interactions. You and I first met when we were playing in rock bands in our 20s.
Indeed.
And we would open up for each other at shows. I loved Brown versus Board. If you have any of their music, please send me some. I don't think I have any of y'all's CDs, nothing like that. I think I may have some stuff with like old Age of Aquarius stuff on there, even some Sun Machine stuff that I can send you also, because we gotta go down memory lane, because we had some good music. We had some good stuff, man.
Let me dig around. I think I can maybe find some stuff. We can do a little old school like cassette exchange.
Dude, I would love that. I'm like, oh my God, this is the cassette of Brown versus Board. That's what my daughter I used to play shows with these guys. Nice. Oh my God, dude. So you go from on stage rock star to educator. Walk me across that bridge. How did that happen, man?
That's a great question. I'm not sure how it happened, to be honest with you. I find that the things that I've been so lucky to find in my life kind of have just happened. Mm-hmm. I'm not someone who seeks out opportunities or is very ambitious. Maybe my parents would disagree with that, but it kind of feels like it all just sort of happened. The first step really was teaching ESL to adults in the Heights. I found an ad for someone who wanted to teach English as a second language to recently immigrated adults. Mm-hmm. Rode my bike up there, had to clean up a little bit in the bathroom before the interview, and I just kind of fell in love with it. Both my parents are teachers, and I think that was kind of the spark. I was like, oh wow, this is something that I can do, that I enjoy, and it makes me feel good to do it.
Even back when we were gigging, you would always mention some article you read. I'm not sure if you remember this about yourself. I mean, even the name, you chose Brown versus Board. Brown versus Board of Education. You chose that as the title of the band you were in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in between songs, you would have some things to say as well. So I would say you've kind of always been this person.
Okay.
It's just there are a lot of rough edges that got hammered out, and now you fit this. We lost touch because the bands broke up. Everyone went different ways. And when I reconnected with you, this was 10 years ago. I was actually teaching a civics course at the time it was called Neighborhood Centers or something like that.
I recall.
Yeah. I think it's Baker Ripley now.
Yep.
And I said, hey man, I want you to guest lecture with my civics course. And you were like, so you came in. You forgot that, didn't you?
I forgot that happened.
Damien.
Yeah, you forgot you came in.
I sure did.
Yeah, you taught a class there.
Holy cow.
That for me that day. Yeah, I said, hey, this is my guy. And you said something to me that I never forgot.
Uh-oh.
You said, the first Hispanic president has already been born.
Mm-hmm. It's a pretty good quote.
Not
my quote. Not my quote.
You said it to us,
yeah.
And everyone was like kind of in agreement and whatnot. And like, yeah, because you were talking about the importance of Hispanics being part of the political process. And you said, this president is already here amongst us now, which I'm calling my shot. My daughter is born. Okay. My daughter is Puerto Rican and black, so I think she's going to qualify as that. She's going to have her mom's brains and my charisma.
Let's go. That's a good combination.
I think she already has that. So okay, I'm calling my shots.
Okay.
But you came in, and I'm like, dude. And at the time, I think you were also doing some teaching over at Texas Southern.
Yeah, I was an adjunct lecturer at TSU teaching Spanish on my bike.
Yeah.
Funny about that, now there is an established teacher at my school that is one of my former students from Texas Southern.
Nice.
It's pretty neat to see that.
Dude, I'm telling you, Matt, brother, you've always been this person.
Right.
Maybe you just didn't see it.
Yeah, it was probably something I ran away from for a long time. It's it's a complicated relationship with education. The educational privilege that I feel like I had to kind of confront that a little bit and accept that I now had some kind of responsibility because of that privilege.
So I know you're not a religious person, but it's interesting. Two of the pastors I've recorded said something very similar, that they ran away from a certain calling and they were raised in certain churches and whatnot, but they eventually came back to, this is the person I was intended to be. Hey man, we all take our own roads to get there, brother.
Yeah, that resonates.
So you work at a school, I think it's in a low-income neighborhood with predominantly bilingual, maybe these are first-generation kids.
Yeah, it's 93, 94, 95% Spanish-speaking or Hispanic heritage.
Yeah.
And mostly low income, free reduced lunch, that kind of thing.
So man, what challenges do you see working not just with those kids, but in those communities? Is there certain things that maybe your average listener of listening to this podcast may not be privy to, or you are so close to it that there's some things that you see that maybe hasn't been said yet?
That's a pretty tall order. I think a lot of what I'm gonna maybe bring up has already been discussed. Just like this kind of push.
Say it to me. Maybe I didn't hear it that time.
This push towards socio-emotional learning and this push towards trying to get kids to become more adept at regulating their emotion.
Okay, so I didn't hear it that time. So help me out. What is that? Social-emotional learning.
Socio-emotional learning. Trying to. And again, I'm originally a Spanish teacher by trade. That's my grad school. But my undergrad is psych, and I've been teaching AP psychology at the high school level for 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
So that's the bridge here. In psych, what I try to do is show kids that there's a really powerful connection between your brain and the things you experience in your body, right? The physiological responses that can happen. And so, for instance, maybe a good analogy here might be like test taking.
Okay.
So someone who experiences a great deal of test taking anxiety, maybe one of the ways to figure out how to confront that and surpass it is to engage in a testing environment that is with fidelity, right? What does that mean? It means let's make a mock test and simulate the experience so that you can recognize what your body does in that moment, when you can feel your heart start to beat a little faster, when your palms start to sweat, when your mind goes blank, etc. And so to recognize those things and the next time it happens,
cortisol it's pumping through because they're nervous. Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah, all that adrenaline. Yeah, and so maybe the next time you experience that, you can recognize it, put a name on it, and let it pass, because that's one of the things about emotions, right? Is that they don't last forever. It'll pass. You just kind of got to figure out how to cope with it.
Why aren't you a counselor, man?
Funny you mentioned that. I've been working in college readiness, which is kind of, on that same road towards being a college counselor. But I suspect you mean a mental health counselor.
Yes, I mean, because the work you're doing with these young people coming from certain backgrounds, some would say that the adage I've heard is, sometimes you have to get it out of the dirt. You're not really born with it. You kind of have to start your life a little bit further back before you can even get to the start of the race. You're already starting from way in back. So just the mental gymnastics a person has to kind of go through and absorb just to get on that race and try to get to the finish line. I could definitely see you helping so much with that. And you're a guy who seems like very easy to talk to. And I like that about you. Neither one of us take ourselves that seriously, even though the work we do is kind of heavy. But dude, this is life, man, and we're all trying to just get out of this the best way we can.
That's a great point. My students might disagree with me not taking myself too seriously.
I gotcha.
But I try to have a good time at work. I do try to laugh as much as I can in the hallways. These kids keep me young, and although I'm not the best listener, I do try. I can sometimes I get carried away when someone asks me the right questions. Sometimes it's hard for me to stop talking. But anyway, I try to listen. So to get back to your question, my wife has asked me to consider maybe that line of work, maybe getting some certifications in the future, because she says kind of something that you alluded to is this idea that that I'm kind of easy to talk to sometimes. Again, I don't know that my students would agree with that.
The space we're in now, mental health has been taken so much more seriously post-COVID. I can't remember a time in my life where people would actually express that actually they're seeing a counselor, they're seeking therapy, and it's accepted. It's not now in some cultures it's still kind of a taboo, but
still some stigma, sure.
Yeah. With this time that we're in now and the way you do life, because I dig how you do life, man. I think there are some young people who wouldn't talk to a traditional counselor, but would see you. You got the hoops in the ears. You're not dying to gray. You got the punk rock. You got tattoos everywhere. They're gonna probably open up to you more than some guy that went to name any high expensive Ivy League school, who may not been in certain neighborhoods, who has not experienced certain sides of life. Mm-hmm. They're going to see you more as an ally and a person they can talk to without being judged.
Fair enough. Thanks for that. Yeah, I try. I don't know that that's a concerted effort on my part. I think that's just kind of the way I am, like you said before, and I think that this new generation of kids that are younger than the iPhone, for instance.
Okay. I'm stealing that line. I like that. That's good.
I think the currency here is authenticity. So if they can see in you something that is pretty real, they'll respond to that. What they don't like is, what's the word I'm looking for here? Something that is contrived.
Fake? Okay.
Yeah, they don't want fake stuff. They don't want, because they get all that here.
Yeah. They have tons of that on TikTok and all those kind of things.
Indeed.
So you mentioned this new generation of kids. We're starting this piece. We're talking with different educators in different parts of their life and people looking at it from different angles. And from your vantage point, what would you say is different about the generation you're teaching? What are you seeing that, again, it could be something that people have already said, but I want your lived experience, because dude, we're all experts in our lived experiences.
I love this question because I think I call them the Zoomers. The Zoomers, I try to defend them at any stage, any chance I get.
Okay, defend them against what's the critique people are giving them?
The critique is, I think, something that we kind of briefly mentioned, is this addiction to technology, this inability to take things seriously, all of these challenges that the world is experiencing. A lot of older folks maybe see young people as being distracted and not serious about life, say.
Okay.
But show me a young generation that's serious about life, right? It doesn't exist. What I would say about the Zoomers is this thing with mental health, firstly, right? That's super important. They are incredibly open, candid, and I want to kind of talk about the masculine side of that, the machismo side of the mental health stuff. But we can get to that.
No, because I know you and I have had disagreements about Andrew Tate. Is his name? I think.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go there, huh?
Yeah, dude. I want to hear what you're thinking.
Righteous. So another thing that they do really well, I think, is their processing speed. Damien, is incomparable. They've just been. They're so connected that their ability to process information is really impressive. They're just faster. Their brains are faster than ours.
Okay, I've never heard. That's interesting. Because of the technology moving so fast, maybe.
That's just my theory.
Their brain has evolved to kind of rapid pace, getting information.
Anecdotal, right?
Okay.
But it seems to me that a lot of my work is constantly trying to keep their attention, right? For better or worse.
I got
right?
you.
And that's kind of how I pose it to them. I'm like, look, everything is fighting for your attention. And my job is to like convince you that what I have to say is important.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how we go into the whole college readiness thing. But they are pretty self-aware, which I really like.
Okay.
And I think that they're just earnest and they want to do good things. And yeah, I just love them. They keep me young, like I said before.
Brother, we got the gray hairs, brother.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we can say how we want. They're keeping us young. Like, no, dude. I try to listen to their music. I'm old. Nope, I'm done.
My hairline continues to edge backwards.
Again, my daughter thought I had alopecia. I'm like, no, baby. I'm just getting older. Papa's in his 40s. It's all going to go out eventually. It's all going to be gone.
Yeah, the machismo thing, right? So, like I said, it's 94, 95, 96% Hispanic or Spanish speaking.
Pretty even when it comes to male and female in class.
For the most part, I would say, yeah. There's just this really, it's like a hard thing to crack, is like this shell that boys, and most boys do this anyway, I think around that age, the 14, 15, 16. There's this shell, and there's this like, there's this toughness that they feel like they're supposed to exude at all times. And it comes at the cost of not understanding how to talk to women, for example, feeling like women owe them something, strict gender roles, it's not my job to do the dishes, etc. Those kinds of attitudes. And again, anecdotal, maybe I'm like reading too much into it, but
you're seeing this. How does this evolve into the classroom?
It's tricky. I have some leeway because I teach AP psychology.
Okay.
And so kind of everything has to do with psychology in some sense.
Okay.
I try to just have an egalitarian view of voices. I try to one of the things that I do is I'll just like write a concept on the board, a word that they're familiar with but that is difficult to define. So I'll do something like friendship. I'll put friendship on the board. And we have to define it collectively. And I let each kid give me their definition of what it means. And I do it with all kinds of different concepts to value their voice. I'm like, look, I want to listen to you. I want to know what you have to say.
I'd actually be curious to see what defines friendship now. I mean, you and I go back, and I noticed this trend because you and I are both friends on MySpace.
Yeah. We probably still are.
Yes, I still have my account. I haven't changed it. So, but thankfully, you'll have to put your full name on MySpace. My MySpace name was Quinny Eskimo.
I remember that.
Yeah. So we did a whole lot of goofy stuff with that. But I noticed that kind of these are my top 8 friends or top 10 friends, and you're kind of putting people in certain boxes, and now how that's kind of, well, these friends follow me, and if you're not following me, you're not my friend. If you are following me, you are, even if I don't know you in real life, and how it kind of divulged into, I would look at Gabe's profile, and okay, I saw the last movie Gabe saw. I saw the last meal Gabe had because he would post it. This is what I'm eating right now. But I stopped knowing Gabe. I didn't know who you were anymore.
Oh, that's heavy.
I knew the stuff that you wanted me to see.
Wow.
But if things were going bad or you were just having a melancholy day, you wouldn't post that. It was more or less the highlights of a person's life.
Sure, it's curated.
So how do you develop friendships at that age, or how you even define a friendship when, okay, well, I have 1,000 followers. Does that mean I have 1,000 friends?
I would venture to say no, it does not. I think that humans only have the capacity to really handle a pretty small amount of individuals.
It was like 150.
Something like that.
Yeah, I remember that quote was thrown around a couple times.
The chimpanzee circle, right? So I don't know. How would they define friendship?
How did they? You did this. How did they define it?
Yeah, I do it almost every year. I think you'd be surprised to not be so surprised. They kind of define it in the same way that, like, most of us, I think, would define it.
Okay.
I think what's changed is the complexity of the social dynamic because of this and because of what you just said. It's like, well, there's 100,000 people that are seeing what I had for dinner and like where I get my latte and whatever else. So, what is it doing? Well, it's probably breeding a sense of self-importance that we may not want. This like kind of narcissism that is like within all of us, and some of us work really hard to suppress it. I don't know. It's complicated. It's like
because I'm not narcissistic. I have a podcast. I'm not narcissistic.
I overheard a conversation the other day actually where a kid was confiding in another kid that they might block them on socials because of like because they had shared their password with a significant other, and anyway,
as you do,
just bananas, super convoluted. I don't portend to understand that kind of stuff. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Gotcha.
But it's worth at least asking them the question about, well, like, what do you think? What does leadership mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? I think those are important questions, and they want to be heard, right? They want to give their opinion.
It'd be interesting working with that dynamic of not children, they're young adults. You work with high school guys.
I call them children all the time.
Okay, they hate it. They're not children, but since some of them again come from other countries or they're first generations, and they've seen the sacrifices their parents have made for them to be here, what freedom means to them. Because they know a different side of life that maybe a lot of us don't know or understand. And how that changes their attitude toward friendship or freedom. Not just things we take for granted, it's just a different worldview that they have coming from someplace else. Because you like psychology, sometimes we're just all products of our environment. And now we shift to that environment, and now they're in your classroom, and Gabe, they're talking to... Do they call you by your first name? Do you want
Mr. Barbieri.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mr. Barbieri. They call me Barbieri sometimes. They call me Barbieri sometimes. They call me Barbs sometimes.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Gotcha. And you have an Italian name, but you are Hispanic via birth.
Yeah, sure. My first language was Spanish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I guess they're trying to relate to you and try to understand as well. And it seems like it's a two-way street because you're trying to understand it also.
Bingo. I tell them all the time, like, I'm not Mexican. There's a bunch of cultural references that y'all bring to the table. I'm not Salvadorian. I'm not Guatemalan, right? So there's a lot of cultural references that I want to know about, and vice versa. I don't speak Spanish like them. I sound very different. Kids ask me all the time, like, where I'm from, where my accent's from, and so forth. You might be surprised, right? Like this whole freedom thing. A lot of kids that I teach, I think, have pretty pure vision of what the American dream is, right? My father, for example, is a product of the American dream. That's another one of those things I had to confront in my adult life, again, like related to this privilege. My dad came over here as a 16-year-old kid to go to college and made something of himself. And I think the students that I teach have a much more nuanced view of the American dream, because a lot of their parents do the same thing in much more dangerous circumstances.
Gotcha.
Right. And so when it's really interesting to hear their thoughts on conversations that are alluding to the counterpoint of the American dream, right? This idea of the American nightmare, that it's a capitalist hellscape, and so for the wages, et cetera, et cetera.
Hellscape. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. And so they don't necessarily understand it in the same way. They're like, look, there's opportunity here. Like, my parents came from somewhere else because this place has some opportunities that they couldn't get
elsewhere.
I
love that. When you are working with these young adults, these young people, and with their families, you see a certain side of how life is, where they're coming from. If you were talking with, because it's a political year and we have our mayor, by the time this comes out, it'll be in 2024. 2024, it's going to be a presidential election cycle.
Election year, that's right.
It's going to be interesting, and I'll just leave it at that. If you had the ear of politicians, governors, what have you, what would you see? What would you need from your vantage point as a teacher, working specifically with this demographic, who's coming from, they have stories that most of us will never experience. Some good stories as well, but some stories of hardship and earning their privilege here, earning their right to be at the table. What would you tell those politicians? What would you need from them?
I don't know if politicians is the appropriate audience, but I think I would say that...
Who would you want to talk to?
This is great.
Okay.
I'm talking to you.
Well,
I love this.
It's just my mom and dad listen to this podcast.
I'll probably listen to it.
Okay. It's two people. And actually, it's our mom. I think my mom is probably doing dishes. Like, that's my baby. She's not really listening. My dad listens to comprehend. My mom just listens because it's just her son's voice.
That's funny. I'm not sure I would... Maybe this is like a contrived answer, but I would say you need to listen to these kids. I don't feel like I would be able to convey appropriately what this generation wants.
Well, not necessarily this generation, but the demographic you're working in.
My kids specifically.
Yeah.
So I run a debate team too, and what I say.
Man, how many jobs do you have, brother?
I know, dude. I know.
You also clean it up. Also, when they you turn the lights off as well. You turn them on. Thank you.
Not anymore.
You fix the plumbing.
In debate, what I tell them is that I'm their cheerleader. I was never a debater in high school.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I feel as a teacher. Like I'm in the right space to be able to not co-opt their stories and their philosophies and their principles so that I can tell the politicians. It's more about like giving them the tools, as you mentioned earlier, the tools to be able to tell their own story and to have their own voice and to be angry when they need to be angry and to be grateful when they want to be grateful.
Gotcha. So, assuming the politicians would listen.
Okay.
Let's just play with that idea. What do you think some of those young people might say? Or what would you think they would need?
I think that they might need for there to be like no booby traps on the border. That's a good start.
Booby traps like Border Patrol?
Like
what do
those
you mean?
freaking in the river where they would put those big balloons with like saws on them.
So again, some people who are listening to this aren't in Houston or in Texas. Describe what I haven't heard this.
Well, it's part of approach to undocumented immigration is lining buoys on the Rio Grande where people commonly cross and putting basically what amounts to like those nets that you would see that keep deep water fish from coming to where people are swimming at the beach, right? Like nets all the way down.
I got you. Okay.
To impede their progress. But also the second part of that is, and you can find pictures of it, these big like saws. They look like something out of The Running Man or something like that from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay. Yeah, I love that movie.
Like death machines, essentially.
Okay.
Pretty bad look. I think they ended up removing them, but they were there for a while, and I think a couple of people drowned because of that. The other side that makes it super personal is that I'm Venezuelan, and a lot of those refugees down there are Venezuelan. I actually recently had a friend of mine from high school just come across. She's living up there in Fort Worth now. She came across with her family in search of a better life.
You went to high school in Venezuela?
I did. I went to high school in Venezuela.
Okay, I didn't know that about you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, 98 we just picked up, and I've never said this out loud.
Okay.
On a recording, but I never passed the 8th grade because I was in New Orleans and kind of failed out, and we left the country, and that was that. And so I finished high school in Venezuela, and then so that experience was pretty intense.
Working with some of these young people's families and looking at all the things that they need to keep their lives going. From the work I've done in certain spaces in the Latin space, I know there's a huge concern when it comes to documentation, and when we do work, when we do like research projects or presentations, sometimes they can be hesitant just to sign the sign-in sheet saying that they were there. And it's not, I've had it in other groups as well.
Wow.
working with these demographics, working with their children is one thing, but working with these demographics, when they come to perhaps PTA meetings and they're talking with teachers, what are they expressing to you about their needs are? Because the reason I ask is because, again, I'm the son of a teacher. My mom taught for 30 plus years, aunts, uncles, all the same. And the one thing they always told me, they said, as a teacher, you can always tell the parents who are working with the kid versus the parents who aren't. And so, since there's no video here, Gabe, you're nodding your head, but people... Sorry. You're like, yes. So for those who can't see him, he's nodding his head in agreement, which is good. So from their vantage point, when you're working with those families, and sometimes there could be a translation issue, or you're working with kids who are in high school, but they may have third, maybe fourth grade education, or maybe they have a grade education. I don't know. You're nodding, but you're not saying anything, Gabe. The people can't see you.
I'm just waiting for you to finish.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
waiting for you to finish.
I'm gonna wrap it up because I'm like, okay, what is it you need working with them? What are they telling you?
My place of employment is kind of selective in the sense that we're a lottery, and so we're already self-selecting from the general population. This is a school where someone had to put your name into the lottery, and they don't want you going to the neighborhood public school for a variety of different reasons. So in that sense, we're pretty lucky to get parents that are more involved than I think most people might expect from a traditional public school setting.
Okay, yeah. So the parent who is concerned about raising a kid and they get pamphlets on parenting and books on parenting, odds are that parent's going to be a good parent anyway because they care enough just to invest in that. You're kind of saying that the parents we're working with, it's a different stratosphere because these parents actually, or guardians or what have you, have actually taken these other steps to ensure their kids has a good education.
That's exactly right. One of the things that we do really well is prepare kids for what we call post-secondary life, right? What happens after 12th grade?
Okay.
What happens after you graduate high school? I think it's pretty clear in this society now that having a college education and having transferable skills is kind of the recipe for really exponentially growing your ability to make money over the course of your life. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So we try to do a lot of that kind of college readiness outreach, help parents understand FAFSA and help them understand scholarships and try to bring in lawyers, immigration lawyers specifically. I've had to write a number of letters, recognition of character for a kid that asked me like, hey, my parents about to get their papers. Can you write a letter that we can show the judge, that says that I'm enrolled in school, that I'm, actively working to better my situation, etc.
That's so cool. You're in a spot like that.
It's quite a privilege, and I'm really upfront with my students every day about that. I'm like, I really feel like it's a privilege to be able to be around y'all every day and try to help you make something out of your life. And another really really crazy thing to me is so many of them describe wanting to do all of these things not for themselves, but because they want to give back to their parents. It's super common, and maybe that's like a collectivism thing, right? It's just Latin or Spanish speaking people tend to be a little more collectivist than individualistic, and so there's this sense of responsibility to like give back to your parents because your parents sacrificed so much for you.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I've seen that in culture. Also, then you're dealing with a demographic that has either experienced or heard the sacrifices their parents made. So I think there's definitely a feeling of obligation. Like, you did all this just so I have a chance. I can't mess up this chance.
It's cut both ways, right? That's an application of pressure.
A lot of pressure.
That sometimes breaks kids.
Yeah. You see that a lot. I've seen that some in other communities, specifically some Chinese and some of my Korean friends have pulled me aside. Just, I'm doing this because of my parents, and there's pressure that, and again, they had so many sacrifices to me to be able to go to these colleges that I'm pressured to perform at a certain kind of thing. And I got the same thing myself, dude. Both my parents had master's degrees. The template was already set. Like, there was no choice in this. You had to go do this also.
Nobody asked me if I wanted to go to college.
No one cared. Like, no, you're going. That's it.
Right.
And it's interesting, like, looking back on parts of my life, I'm like, you know what? I actually probably would have been just as happy blue collar working, but those jobs where you work 30, 40 years at a factory and stuff, those aren't really here anymore. So I typically describe myself as a blue collar guy with a white collar education. Because, dude, those opportunities aren't available. Those for technology, or maybe got shipped overseas, etc. Those kind of places where you can just stay and kind of have your life and be with your family and friends on weekends. You know, I like fishing, hunting, all that kind of stuff. Those opportunities aren't there anymore. So you have to evolve. It's interesting also how, even though you and I took non-traditional roads to get where we are, just me telling you some stories about you, like, dude, I can so see you in front of a classroom because I saw you in front of an audience, commanding an audience on stage, talking with people.
Very similar energy for sure.
These are transferable skills.
That's right. Those performances, yeah.
I had no idea recording bands back in the day would lead to me with the microphone, and my job description didn't ask any of this kind of stuff, but it's one of these skills that you have just being around. I think some of the skills younger generations are having when it comes to, you know, Adobe and, you know, all the stuff they can do, cutting and pasting, and I'm like, Mike, that's amazing. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's another thing. They teach themselves. They teach themselves a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
they are self-taught at so many different skills that are definitely going to be transferable, even though you didn't get those skills from a college campus.
Yeah, and you know, this might be taking the conversation in a different direction, but I might argue that the things that people like Andrew Tate espouse, those are not transferable skills, and they might in fact put you on the wrong path and put you on a trajectory that you may end up regretting in the future.
No, you're not wrong, man. Again, you have access to so much information. Sometimes there are those, I don't want to call them bad actors because I don't know the man. I don't know most of these online personalities. I don't think sometimes they get that's a personality. That's not how this person may really be in real life. They're showing a persona. It's almost like you're watching a Marvel movie. I know Chris Evans is not really Captain America. Sometimes some of the people you see online have these personas that people think that's how they are when the cameras are off.
Might be almost all of them.
Might be. I don't know. I don't really get in the stuff I do. I don't really get to meet a lot of people who are like, oh, I have 10,000, 20,000 followers. It doesn't really. I would love to sit with them. If you know people, I would love to interview them. I'd love to understand, and not from a place of judgment, but I'm really curious as to how we became the people we are today. You and I started on a path that led very differently, but ultimately 20 years later we're still in the same space, and we're still talking to each other.
Right.
So I'm always curious, like, who is this person? Who are they raised by? How did they get to be the person they were today? Because they didn't just come out of the womb like this. A series of events happen. Sometimes it's just dumb luck. Sometimes it's no, I strive to be this. Yeah. And I'm so fascinated with that, especially when it comes to teaching, when we're in such an age where during COVID, a lot of things changed education-wise. Since the kids had to stay at home, parents got much more involved in what their kids were learning, and which started a lot of different disagreements when it comes to certain things in America's past. But also, I think for a second, teachers really had an ally in parents because they had to see what the teachers went through every day. And now that we're kind of on this side of COVID where the kids aren't necessarily at home, at school and stuff anymore, some of that may be kind of dwindling, but some of it, I think you still have some parental advocates out there who are like, these teachers do a hard job. They do it with a room full of kids trying to get their attention. And we got to see what this person is like in 2020 when my kid had to sit at home all day and was in his underwear or in his pajamas listening, trying to pay attention to what's going on in school and trying to stay in that course. So you got some advocates out there, definitely.
In a household, too, where there's several kids, right, trying to do the same thing at the same time. It's like I was hearing my colleagues on my call talking to the kid, like sitting next to, because it's a sibling.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was a pretty wild time. I almost quit my job every day that year. It was rough.
What was going on?
Just COVID. You know, you mentioned the performance aspect of teaching, and that's something that I really thrive on and really get a lot of energy from. And trying to do that in front of a screen was really depressing. I was in a pretty rough place during that time. We moved out to Missouri City in the middle of that year, actually. But yeah, it was just tough. I was like, is this what it's going to be like? It was almost like having a newborn again. You know, when you have a newborn and like the kid won't sleep and you're like, is this what it's going to be for 18 years? What is happening? That's kind of what it felt like. I was like, oh my gosh, is this the new teaching? Because if so, I can't do it. I got to find another line of work. I can't do this. But thankfully, we're back. We got back to the classroom, and you know, I got the juice again, and it's fun. It's electric. You know.
That's what's up, man. Yeah. So, last question for me, brother. We're still talking about technology, and just for what you're doing. And I talked to other teachers also. They're showing more videos. It's much of an interactive thing. My daughter doesn't have books anymore. The kids don't use their lockers.
Lord Almighty!
I know.
What are we doing, Damien?
And I'm like, we don't have the books. I don't have any books. Like, what do you mean? Hey, girl,
what's a book?
With the influx of technology, how do you see education moving forward?
Well, it's funny you mention that.
And also, it's a two-part question.
What's the
other part is, especially if you're dealing with low-income students who may not have access to this technology, do you think there's going to be a bigger gap also between, for simplicity, to say the have and have-nots?
Well, so the first part of your question, what I try to do, what I'm doing currently, is instead of pretending that ChatGPT and AI doesn't exist, trying to actively incorporate it into the classroom.
Okay.
Which is kind of dicey, which is a tricky proposition because at the college level they're already banning it, and it's, you know, they're coming down pretty hard on it. I might take the other approach. I might take the opposite approach. I think you have to empower kids. This isn't going away anytime soon. Show them how to use it and teach them like responsible use of this tool.
Yeah,
that's one way for the tech. But in terms of access, you know, I think that I still go to public libraries. I take my kids, my biological children, to public libraries as often as I can, because they're one of the only places that exist anymore in this country where there's no expectation of you can just go and just be there and just hang out. Okay. Try doing that at Barnes and Nobles. Eventually, they're going to tell you to buy something or get out. Same thing with Starbucks. Same thing with, and so public libraries to me are just a bastion of the old way. And it's funny that we end up talking about libraries when you were like, my kid don't even have books anymore. But I think it's a sacred place. There's internet access. There's all kinds of groups that meet at public libraries and so forth. So maybe I'm old school. I'm showing my age here, but I'm like huge believer in the power of libraries.
Dude, you're younger than I am. Stop it. Stop it.
They're healing spaces. I truly believe in the power of libraries as healing and sacred spaces.
Dude, that is my favorite quote. The quote about, and I'm just processing what you just said. You're like, that there's no expectation to buy anything.
Yeah.
You're right. I've never even looked at it from that point of view before.
Where else? Find me another place where that exists.
I can't. I can't even think. I've never even thought of that before. I'm so used to when I go to a place, before I even leave my house, I know I'm taking my credit card and stuff with me, my debit card, because no matter where I go when I leave the house, there's an expectation to purchase something. Even something as simple as gasoline for the car. Yeah. You have to spend some money every time you leave the house. I've never thought that, yes, there are these places you can go where there is, you put your wallet away. If you have a wallet, just need your ID if you want to check out a book or something like that. But that's it. There's no expectation to purchase anything here. That is a part of this world that maybe we could kind of bring back.
There's also a crazy juxtaposition with that too, because we hold the entirety of human knowledge in our pockets at all times, and yet it's like we're not really aware of that. It's like we know it, but I don't know. It's just this weird thing. Libraries are better than cell phones. I might venture.
I'm going to end it on that one.
So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Gabe is still a really good friend of mine. I really enjoy talking to him every time we get a chance to link up. So below, you should be hopefully seeing all the people who helped make this podcast what it is. Thank you so much for tuning back with us. We're looking forward to putting these back out there in the ether, and to the people who may or may not be listening. Thank you so much for you guys. We definitely appreciate you guys so much for tuning back with us, staying the course with us. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And as always, do good things. Thanks for listening to our latest episode. If you like the content and want to help us grow, do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe to the Health RCMI channel. Also, tell a friend.